week of September 15th was National Drive Electric Week. On Wednesday, the city of Longmont unveiled its first two electric cars. Both were 100% electric Nissan Leafs.
I think this represents probably the third best mode of transportation. The first is basically our own two legs. This would be more walking. And the next best mode of transportation is a bicycle. And electric vehicles, I think, are a wave of the future.
On Saturday, the Tinkkermill sponsored the first ever Drive Electric Week event in the city of Longmont, where visitors could check out the latest electric vehicles. The event featured electric cars, electric bicycles, electric motorcycles, and even gas-powered cars which had been converted to electric. Before visiting the car show, let's look at some very early electric vehicles dating back to 1908.
Our next car is a 1908 Silent Waverly. It's an electric car. This car is typically really a horseless carriage. It was built just like a carriage. Leather fenders, hard rubber tires, leather dash, the cape top. Not unlike a lot of horse-drawn carriages you might see on the streets of any big city. I believe it operates on 64 volts. You just fill the front compartment, the back car with the batteries hooked in series till you come up with 64 volts, and you're ready to go. They had a charger in your home, and you plug it in overnight, and the next day it was ready to go. And with good batteries, you had a range of about 50 miles. It had about top speed of 25 miles an hour. Not too unlike today. The range, the thing that's held the electric car up was the development of the battery, and now they've made a lot of progress in developing the new batteries that have a greater range at a higher speed. But still, they're basically commuter car or town cars. They were very popular with the ladies because of the ease of operation. You didn't have to crank it, you didn't have to worry about steam. And not to say men didn't like that too, but I think the female market was the big segment that they were after. They were competing with horses and buggies on the streets, so 25 miles an hour was more than adequate, and very dependable, very little to go wrong.
How about the distinctive lights these have on? I've never seen this before.
They're unusual. They were electric. Here's the wire needs to be fixed, but obviously it'd be electric. It's an electric car. You had plenty of batteries. Like the steam car, it's steered with a tiller, folds up for easy access, and then down, all you had was a rheostat to control your voltage. That controlled your speed. And again, how you drove them was determined how far you could go. If you were jackrabbit starts, you'd run your batteries down sooner. If you were moderate with it, you'd extend your range. The car you're standing next to now is a circa 1928 Detroit Electric, another electric car. This car came out of Denver. It was owned by Mrs. Fonches. Some of the people who lived in the area for many years might remember the Fonches shoe store in downtown Denver. She drove this car to work every day. She was a presence in her store. And the last sticker on the windshield is the second 6 months of 1946. At that time, and much years later, Colorado had a twice-a-year inspection period. You had to go to a garage and get your brakes checked and a few things off system. It's, I believe, 84 volts. The front and back compartments hold batteries. We have the charger over in the other garage. It was quite an affair. Mercury arc rectifier, I believe is what they called it. And you got all these dials and levers, and it's quite a little process to get it fired up. That's what you use to charge your batteries overnight. You didn't just plug it into the socket on the wall. Very typical era body style of the time for the electrics. Again, very popular with the ladies, as Mrs. Fonches bears out. You open that door, if you would please. I don't know whether you can see it, but it's also a tiller steering system similar to the little 1908 Waverly. That folds down once you're seated. Both of them do. The short one is your throttle, and the long one is your steering mechanism. So you steer with your right hand, your left hand on the throttle. It's just a coordinated effort. And my mother used to drive this car in the parades, Boulder County Fair parades.
Now let's take a look at some more modern electric vehicles at the first ever Drive Electric Week event in Longmont, Colorado.
We're speaking this morning with Clinton Knackstedt from Colorado State University, and he has an electric car here from that university. Clinton, how are you doing this morning?
Doing great.
What is it that you'd like to tell us, first of all, about your car here from Colorado State?
Sure. So this is the EcoCar 2. It's part of an inter-university competition that ended last year, where we were tasked with taking a 2013 Chevy Malibu and turning it into a hybrid that could go at least 200 miles while maintaining the same performance as the original vehicle. At CSU, we don't like to do things easily, so we decided to go with a hydrogen fuel cell battery hybrid. You can see up here in the front, these 3 green boxes are where the fuel cells are stored, and they give power to the battery, which the battery in turn powers the vehicle and gives us 250 miles of range total in this vehicle.
I see. So this is something we haven't considered before, the combination hybrid electric car with the hydrogen cell, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. And how do they work together?
So the way it works, we have 3 hydrogen tanks in the back. They sit at 5,000 psi when they're full, and then there's a pipe that runs from the back to the front up to the fuel cells. The fuel cells have a chemical reaction where the hydrogen is split on one side and then it reforms, making water vapor on the other side, and that chemical reaction produces power. And that power goes to the battery. This vehicle's made like a range extension vehicle, very similar to the Prius in many ways, but rather than using an internal combustion engine to provide additional electricity, it uses the fuel cell instead.
I see, I see. So does it have like a standard transmission or 3-speed, 4-speed? What is it?
In our case, since we have an electric motor, they spin at much higher speeds than a regular combustion engine, and there are very small losses depending on how fast you go or changes in efficiency. So we have a single speed gear reduction transmission that is on the front axles.
Just 1 speed forward then, and a reverse, I take it?
Yes.
Okay, great, great.
The price for this vehicle is much higher than it would be if it was commercially produced.
Sure.
And the closest example that I can tie to is that next year Toyota is going to be coming out with a fuel cell vehicle. That it's a different architecture than ours, but it's going to be about $80,000 for that vehicle, which is pretty high, but it's getting better. There's a lot of research going into making the fuel cells cheaper.
I see, I see. And standard, everything is the standard on the car then that was taken off a regular fuel-consuming car then? Okay. How did you have any particular challenges in adapting the space?
It was definitely a challenge. If you look at the vehicle, anywhere, there's no space.
Yeah.
Anywhere. Except inside the cabin. Even the back compartment is pretty full. Although a lot of that is because, again, it's a one-off vehicle. We couldn't start from the ground up. If you actually had the money and the resource to develop a commercially producible vehicle, there wouldn't be any significant decrease in space in the vehicle. But as it is, space was a huge concern.
So you drove this down from Fort Collins then, I take it?
Yep.
And are there any other ongoing projects there at Colorado State involving the electric vehicle?
Definitely. Like I said, this project ended last year, but we have it here because we're starting the new iteration of the competition, EcoCar 3, which has very similar rules, but they changed a lot of things up to try and focus on innovation, but again, still trying to maintain their performance. But the one nice advantage is that this time we get an upgrade from the Malibu to the Camaro.
Oh, okay. So you get a little bit of a sportier look then for your college kids. Listen, how much more do you have to go to graduate then?
I just started grad school this year. I worked on this project as a senior at CSU, and now I'm working as a grad student on EcoCar 3 for the next 2 years.
So you probably have a pretty good viewpoint on the dramatic change in technology then. From what you've seen when you first started till now, the technology is changing fast. Can you comment on that?
It definitely is, especially with the fuel cells. A lot of people are trying to push fuel cells to become popular with hybrids, but it's still suffering drastically in the cost of the platinum in the fuel cells and the durability of them. But it's gone up tremendously in just the last few years, and is going to continue to do so as companies like Toyota and Ford in the next few years and many others start coming out with fuel cell vehicles. It's going to pump a lot of research money into that area.
It brings up another interesting question when you mentioned platinum. I understand that there may be some other rare earth elements involved in the construction of these vehicles. Can you comment on that?
There's definitely lots of different requirements for the batteries, and that I don't know all of the details. In our case, we have a lithium iron phosphate battery. But for the fuel cells, the most valuable resource that's in it is the platinum.
I see. Your standing in the competition then was, can you comment on the competition itself?
We definitely came to the competition very strongly. We didn't come away with any awards, but there were a variety of reasons for that. Partially because we had the most unique vehicle in the competition. Out of the 15 universities that were competing, we were the only ones that have zero emissions and the only ones that had fuel cells in the vehicle, which was great from a technology and an innovation standpoint, but it did it caused some unique challenges with the vehicle that made it so that we didn't end up with any awards. So you can see that we have our 3 hydrogen tanks. When they're full, they sit at 5,000 psi. They're aluminum tanks wrapped in about 3 inches of carbon fiber. They're rated to take a 50 caliber bullet point impact, so they're not going anywhere. And in the middle, you can see the large box, which is some power electronics that they change the power coming out of the fuel cells and regulate it so that it interfaces with the battery properly.
Those look like pretty big tanks. And now addressing the safety issue again, you mentioned a 50 caliber bullet impact. At what range would that be, Clinton?
I can't say for sure. I haven't tried shooting one of them. That's just the number that I hear everyone saying about them. And that's one thing that's really different with hydrogen that people don't necessarily understand intuitively, is that hydrogen burns very differently than gasoline, and there's some positive and some negative things for that. One of the big positives is that it is so light that if, for say, these tanks suddenly opened and all the gas was out, your eardrums would blow out since they're at 5,000 psi.
That's comforting.
Yeah, I mean, eventually they heal themselves, but then you'd have the giant cloud of hydrogen gas, and within 3 seconds it'll be all above your head.
Okay.
So that's one advantage, and when it does burn in an environment like that, it burns so fast that things don't ignite. It's just one big wall of flame, and you might get a 2nd degree burn if you were unlucky, but that'd be about it. It burns very, very quickly. We have a hydrogen tank port over here where we can just fill it. The standard already exists out there for how to refill high pressure hydrogen at either 5,000 or 10,000 psi, and so we just have that the same port that this U.S. standards already exist for that.
Question is, how many miles do you get from that much hydrogen if you're not using the battery at all?
Sure. When these tanks are at 5,000 psi, they hold about 5 kilograms worth of hydrogen, which is not very much weight, but it's a lot of hydrogen, and you can go about 200 miles off of that energy content.
So a little bit of a question of range anxiety being addressed here with the hydrogen. How far would you go with an internal combustion engine with the hydrogen?
It would probably be less distance than that, because combustion engines have much lower efficiency than fuel cells. These fuel cells here get about 30% efficiency. That's based off of like the total energy content of the hydrogen. Most combustion engines get more in the range of 20%. It depends on that. Although in more industrial applications, fuel cells actually can go much, much higher than that, especially if you capture waste heat that comes off of the fuel cells. It has been predicted that we could commercially have fuel cells operating at 85% efficiency.
It's so refreshing to talk to young people. You can see there are a lot of smart minds working on this. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate your efforts that you're making to create a vehicle with a sustainable future.
Well, thank you for coming and talking to me about it.
We're speaking now with Eric Sprague, who is from a resident of Platteville, who is a Volt owner. Eric, can you tell us about your new car?
It's a 2013 Chevy Volt. I purchased it used.
Okay.
In July, and
Where?
At King Chevrolet in Longmont.
Okay.
And the nice thing about this particular purchase, I've always liked the Volts. Thing is they're a little out of my price range at the time, especially when they're brand new. Well, this one was used, and the price was right, and it was a dealer demo, and I was still able to get the tax rebates since it wasn't it's never been purchased. So I still get the tax rebates on it, and it had about 25,000 miles on it. I got a good deal on it, and I'm pretty happy with it so far. And nice thing is, I do live in Platteville. I work in Niwot, and it's about a 60-mile round-trip drive. And from home to work, and from work home, I'm getting about 280 miles a gallon.
Whoa.
So it works out. I'm unable to charge at work, but about 2/3 of the way home to Platteville, I run out of battery. The nice thing about this, the extended range, the engine kicks in,
Right.
and then I can motor on home and then plug it in. So it works out pretty slick.
So there are no charging stations then, either
No.
in Platteville or Niwot?
No, I end up having to, excuse me, I end up having to plug in at home, and I just have a 110 outlet, and then in about 10 hours overnight it charges up. And I just recently installed a 240 outlet into my house, and I just need to get the charger for that, and that'll charge it in about 4 hours. So I'm just saving my money to get the new charger.
And you do that in off-peak hours then?
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
before
Right.
you go to work, yeah.
Right. So very happy with it. I can't say anything bad about the car. One nice feature, it does have a sport mode in it, and where you put it in sport mode and it acts just like a sport car. It accelerates really quick, and it's a lot of fun. So, most people think that electric cars are boring, but this car isn't. It's a
That's
pleasure
what
to
we're finding
drive.
out. Yeah, speak more about the handling on the corners and like that.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's a pretty heavy car, so it really stays on the road well. It corners well, and this is an amazing product. It really is.
What can you say about what we're looking at here?
Well, one thing that's very interesting, what a lot of people misunderstand is the Chevy Volt is a hybrid, and really it's not. Basically, you have a gas engine that will drive a generator, and that generator will power the battery. And the battery supplies the electricity to the motor, and the motor is what actually drives the car, where the engine is not connected to the transaxle at all. And that's where the confusion is about what a hybrid car is. So when the battery is totally depleted, the engine will drive the generator to charge a battery. And so if you look at the engine, or the engine compartment here, you have the engines placed here, and then you have the Voltec, or the generator section, just off to the side here. So it's all compact in one location, where the battery resides behind the back seat, right on the back seat. The back seat passengers sit right on the battery. Once the battery is depleted, the engine will supply enough electricity to the battery to drive the motor, just like the battery is 100% charged. So you feel no lag in performance at all. So there is enough horsepower to generate enough electricity to keep the car going as fast as you want it to go. And like I was mentioning earlier, in sport mode, if the battery's fully depleted, the engine will rev up to a certain point in order to keep up with the demand of how fast you're driving. So they've done an amazing job. The engineers there at GM did a great job in setting this car up. It changes dependent on the demand that you place on the motor. So like if you was to put the pedal all the way to the floor, at first the engine's not going to respond until the battery gets to a certain point where it needs more electricity. So then the engine will rev up to keep up with that demand. And then it's got regenerative braking, to where if you let off of the pedal, it will kick that generator in, and it'll recharge the battery for you to a certain point. So if you're on a hill and you let off the pedal, it will basically recharge a battery without any gas whatsoever. Same thing when you have a fully charged battery. When you're coasting or going down a hill, it will regenerate the battery as well. So, okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric.
Yeah.
Pleasure talking to you, and your enthusiasm shows.
Great, thank you.
Thanks so much. We're speaking now with Sherri O'Hara from Small Planet E-Bikes, and Small Planet E-Bikes based right here in Longmont.
That's right.
Okay, can you tell us more?
Yeah, Small Planet E-Bikes is located at 724 Main Street here in Longmont.
Okay.
And it's our flagship store, actually. We also have a second store in Dallas, Texas. And we're looking at opening a store in Denver, too. But we're one of the few e-bike specialty stores in the Rocky Mountain region. And I mentioned e-bikes. A lot of people don't know what that means, but it stands for an electric assist bicycle. And basically, an electric assist bicycle just means it's a regular bicycle, but you have different modes where you can ride, sometimes using a throttle, depending on the bike, or you can be pedaling, and as you're pedaling, the motor kicks in and assists you. So you're able to like fly up a hill where before you would be bogged down and slowed way down, but you can just maintain your speed and really cruise along. And so anyway, there are a lot of different models that have different features. One important thing that I think to remember is they're an excellent way to get exercise if you want, and to use the bikes for errands and commuting and around town. The main difference is you can go a lot farther, faster, and you're not getting as tired, or maybe if you're commuting to work, you don't have to stop and change and shower before you go to work because you haven't exerted as hard, or it's up to the person, the way you ride the bike. You can basically choose how much exercise you want to get.
So can you tell us why you chose Longmont to start out?
Well, basically the owner, Tom Wilson, lived here, and he wanted to do something that he felt was really good for the environment as far as offering alternate modes of transportation.
And you were expecting a market then, too.
Right.
You're probably sure of between here and Boulder.
Yes,
that
because
you have a pretty good market.
We do. The Front Range of Colorado and all of the state of Colorado has a very strong bike culture. So out of all of 50 states, Colorado has, like Fort Collins and Boulder, two top-rated bike-friendly communities out of, the top echelon of all the bike-friendly communities in the U.S. are right here in the Front Range, right where we are. So we already have a strong bike culture, and so it's kind of been a nice transition for people that have already been used to riding bikes, to adopt these as another form. It's kind of like another extended member of the bike family.
Right. Now, we were speaking earlier about the concept of using these on the bike paths. Can you speak to that?
Sure. It's still fairly new to some of the local governments, so not all of them have really addressed it as far as legality. But it is a little bit of a patchwork from community to community. Boulder, for example, a platinum level, top ranked community for bicycling, recently had city council meetings, and they adopted a pilot program for 1 year of allowing e-bikes on all of the multi-use trail systems. And they were looking at it from the perspective of they want to encourage cycling. Their stated goal for the transportation master plan is to get 15% of the community commuting by bicycle. Yeah, and that's to kind of counteract some of the congestion, and as they get denser, with housing and everything, that's, can detract from quality of life. But if you get
air quality improvement,
air quality, etc., and so the more people that you can get using personal transportation, well, look at the footprint of the bike versus how much space is needed to accommodate vehicles.
Yeah, especially with so many vehicles being just, occupied by one person.
Exactly. Yeah, there's that whole theory, does it really truly make sense for a 160-pound person to be surrounded by 4,000 pounds of steel, glass, and rubber in order to go pick up a cup of coffee, or run to the library, or go to the health club, or whatever.
I see.
So,
now I see that you have a couple of models for different occasions. Then, can you speak a little bit to the different models that are offered for different types of occasions?
You bet. This one, for example, this is a Stromer bike. It's out of Switzerland, and it's been very popular for people of all ages, baby boomers, but also particularly popular with younger people that are using it as a car alternative. So we've got people living in Longmont that commute to Louisville daily. Maybe they're doing a 30 to 40 mile round trip commute by bike, and which is pretty easy to do. You'd be surprised. People that, might only be able to do 10, 15 by a traditional bike, all of a sudden they're doing 30, 40, even 50 mile round trip commutes.
That brings up the question, how long does that take then? What are the top speeds on these?
It varies a little bit among the bikes, but typically 20 miles an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, top speed. This one can go a little faster than that, but it's in pedal assist, so it's up to the rider to get the speed up to 25 or 30. And with a regular road bike, if you've ever watched any cycling competitions, they get up to 30 miles an hour, 40 sometimes, if you're pushing it. So you can do it. You can push yourself on this and get the speed up there.
So it does come with a speedometer here. I see this is quite a fancy digital one.
Right. Right. Yeah. And this one, this particular bike has, it's pedal assist only. So it's up to the rider to pedal to get and the motor kicks in and assists your pedaling.
Okay.
And as I mentioned earlier, that you can choose how much exercise you get. It has an eco mode, which is like a level 1 light assist. So if you just really, want to get a pretty decent workout and also get the maximum distance out of your battery, which is in here.
Right.
And then if you keep it in the economy mode or light assist, then you can go 60 miles on a single charge of your battery, of your lithium battery. But if you want a little bit more help, maybe you live in the foothills and you have to go up some steep inclines, to get home at night after work or something. Well, all you have to do is press the button and you can kick the power up. So you've got about 4 levels of power, so you can have a higher level of pedal assist or just the light assist. And in addition to that, this particular model has what's called a regenerative mode, where anytime that you brake, or if you want to click it into the recoup mode, riding mode, then you're actually recharging your battery as you're riding. So if you were to, let's say you were touring and riding over Vail Pass or something, or just, in a hilly area, when you're on your downhill grades, you can kick the setting into the recoup mode, and then your pedaling is actually charging the battery as you ride, which is a pretty cool feature because you can extend the range or distance of your battery that way.
Now you say Vail Pass, this brings up a question in mind. Has there been any competitions yet, like we've seen with the regular bike? Is that starting to happen?
There has been kind of a demo event called the Pikes Peak Hill Climb, where they bring in different models of bikes and riders, and they just see who can make it up to the top. So that's a pretty challenging mountain.
No races or anything like that yet with numbers?
There could be. I may just not be aware of it, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wondering, knowing the competitive nature of many Colorado residents, and
right.
as soon as they get a hold of anything that moves.
That's right. They want to turn it into competition.
I see there are several accessories here and different versions. I imagine you could probably you know, modify this to include a rack of some sort?
Yeah,
or...
yeah. In fact, normally we bring bikes with some racks, but we don't have the rack today. But you can customize the bike to have fenders, put on a rear rack, and carry panniers, you know, saddle bags or single-sided, you know, bike bags. And that's one of the big things that we emphasize. And I'm sorry we didn't bring them today, but you get the right gear and you'd be amazed at all that you can do by bike.
Okay.
Grocery shopping, I regularly will shop on my bike and get maybe $90 in groceries in a single trip,
Sure.
just by loading up some side panniers, you know, putting a few things on the top of my rack. Yeah, and it's amazing all that you can carry.
Okay, now we've heard from the cars and the subject of range anxiety. Is there such a thing with a bike?
Well, you don't have as much range anxiety with the bicycle because you can always pedal it.
Pedal it,
Right. I would say the only instance would be if you were, you know, ran out of charge on an uphill grade, then you would feel a little bit of the additional weight of the bicycle. But on the flat, you know, it's not that big of a deal. And it varies a little bit depending on the model of bike, but, you know, some are lighter than others. But the weights are anywhere from in the 40-pound range up into 55,
Okay.
maybe 60.
And they're primarily charged at home?
Yes. Generally, that's the way you would do it, although you can charge people that commute longer distances to work might remove their battery once they got to work, take it inside and charge it at their desk,
Okay.
and then pop it back into the bike for their ride home.
So there's no need to look for a charging station with the
No,
bike?
nothing special.
Okay.
It's just like charging a computer or a cell phone.
Okay.
You have a special charger that comes with each model of bike, and you plug it into you can actually plug into the battery while it's on the bike, or you can pull the battery out.
Okay. How long does it take?
If you've fully depleted the batteries, let's say you've ridden on this bike, you've ridden 50 or 60 miles, then it would take anywhere from 4 to 6 hours to charge.
Okay.
But most people, if you're just riding, say, 15 miles or something, it might only take an hour and a half.
Okay.
Something like that.
All right. There's another thing about these bikes. Can you say something about that for you personally?
They're fun. They're totally fun. When you get on one of these and ride, all of a sudden you feel like a kid again. And I can't express or emphasize strongly enough how much fun they are to ride. So wherever you're going, it makes riding to the grocery store, doing an errand, going to the farmer's market, all of those things are so much funner when you're just doing it on a bike. You're getting the fresh air, the exercise,
it's a task
and it's
that you
exhilarating.
look forward to.
Right.
Very good. You're a wonderful spokesman. I hope more people join in your enthusiasm.
Well, we hope so too. Yeah, come on down and try one. We do free test rides and rentals and whatever. So come
that
try it out.
That address again is?
724 Main Street.
Main Street.
Downtown Longmont, just about a block and a half north of the Old Town area.
Okay. We'll do it. We'll stop by for a test ride.
All right. I hope you do. Thanks.
Okay, sure.
Go ahead.
Alan and Jane Webb, the owners of the Tesla Model S P85. Red. Performance 85. That's what this is all about.
That's what it's all about.
Right.
This is a very comfortable car. It's a very fast car. It's a joy to drive because of its electric motor. I don't know what kind of car you drive, but I have a couple of others and have driven lots of cars. I'm not a kid. And with an electric motor, there's no lag. So you put your foot down, you're going, you take your foot back up, and you're slowing down. And because you're regenerating electricity, when you take your foot off it, the electric motor becomes a generator. And this car makes about 20% of its own electricity. And so when you're driving around town, you're really not using your brakes unless you come to a red light or a stoplight. You're just speeding up, slowing down, all with your right foot. And it's very, very quick, very smooth. After a while, it's totally second nature. You don't even notice it. If you want to go fast, it's very fast. It gets to 60 in 4 seconds, which is pretty quick.
4 seconds?
Yes. It'll do a quarter mile in about 12 seconds. And so it's a pretty quick car. And you have to be a little careful so you don't go screaming around getting yourself tickets, especially in a red one.
In a red one especially.
Especially, sure. It holds 7 people. A driver and a passenger in front, 3 people here, and in the back, well, I won't go over there right now because he's on a tripod. But if you open that, Jane, we can shoot it later. It's got jump seats in it for kids.
Oh.
So you can have 2 kids back there, 3 adults in the back, and 2 people in front. All the controls for this car, can you see inside it all with that?
I'll give a shot later.
Okay, are on this big central screen. Okay, it's a 20-inch screen, and all the controls for the car are on the touch screen. Everything that you want to do, except for, of course, the brake and the accelerator. But everything else is there. The audio is there, navigation is there, the radio is there, the camera, backup camera is there, all of that, and it's all on the great big screen. So
the GPS installed?
GPS is on there, and actually the internet. You're connected to the internet by satellite.
It's quite a stylish looking car.
It is a good looking car, I think. You know, I think they did a good job figuring it out, and the way it's also the slipperiest car in the country. That is to say, it's the most aerodynamic of all the cars built in the United States. And of course, with an electric motor, and for range, that's a good thing. Also for power, it's very nice. So, yeah, and we drive it every day. We drive it about 50 to 70 miles a day. Just in a normal day, and we plug it into a 220, 240 line, same as you would have for your dryer.
Okay.
And we have one in the garage. We just plug it in, and a couple hours later, it's all charged up.
Oh, so you don't have to worry about looking for a power station then at all?
No, we don't. We just don't. We have driven 225 miles in this car, out on a trip down to Parker, I think, in southern. A little further south, and then back home again, mostly on the highway. And we had maybe 30 miles of travel left by the time we get back after 225 miles. Most of it at 70 miles an hour, which really eats power, as you know.
Yeah.
In any car.
Right.
You know. Yeah. So that was good. There are supercharger stations now. We can drive coast to coast free. Tesla has built superchargers everywhere, about 200 miles apart, sometimes less than that. There's one in Silverthorne, there's one in Grand Junction.
And they appear on your GPS?
They're on they're all right there. I just plug them in. I just push a button on the screen, and it shows me where the next one is.
Okay.
And you go there. They're all in shopping malls or next to restaurants. So you drive a couple hundred miles, you go, plug in your car. An hour later, it's totally charged, and you've been off having lunch.
Okay.
And you go another 200 miles.
So is there a charge for those power stations? It's free?
For Tesla people, it's free.
For Tesla people, it's free?
Tesla Model S owners get it free. Oh. So you go coast to coast free.
Oh.
Yeah.
Availability, how about that?
Oh, yeah. The Park Meadows Mall is where the Tesla store is, and it's not a dealer. There aren't any dealers. Okay. You go there to see what the car is like, to look at the different things you can configure into it, and you order the car on the internet.
Park Meadows Mall.
Park Meadows Mall.
Where's that, Alan?
That's down south, down by IKEA, and it's down just near the tech center.
Okay.
Okay, down south, just off I-25. Yep.
And what do you know about general availability on these? Say I wanted to go out and get one today.
When we ordered it, it was just like ordering any car. We got it 6 weeks later. And it could have been a little faster, but they had not started making this color yet, and we wanted this color. And matter of fact, we got an email from Elon Musk, who runs the company, saying, hey, we started making the red ones. It's kind of nice. They're very smart about PR.
Right.
Yeah. And so we got it about 6 weeks later. I think now there's a little bit longer wait, but I'm not sure. I think it might be as long as 2 months, 2.5 months. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, mostly it's around 5 or 6 weeks, depending on how many people have ordered them recently.
Right.
And they made 30,000 cars last year.
Market driven, totally.
Yeah. And they're selling them in Europe too.
Yeah.
And all over the country.
And the rest of the world?
In
Australia.
I don't think they're selling them in Australia and China yet. They got plans to go into China. I don't think they've gone there yet, but they're in most of the European countries.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Alan.
It's a pleasure.
We're speaking this afternoon with George Tomasevich. George has driven his car up and is a member of the Denver Electric Vehicle Council. And he's here in Longmont at Tinkkermill with his 914 Porsche A converted antique. This is 72, I believe.
Yes.
And you can tell us a little bit about, you know, the construction of this car?
Actually, this is the second conversion. In 2009, I stripped it. The most dangerous part was getting the gasoline out, as it turns out. No surprise there. And put in a lead acid conversion. These battery boxes, for example, are fairly solid. This was the front or middle gas tank used to be here. Now it's different kind of fuel, if you want to think of it that way. And the lead acid batteries were the same width as the length of these cells, so it's a good fit. I have a little space left over.
So the battery is where the old gas tank used to be?
Some part of it. And let's see. This is a DC converter, and there's a deep cycle 12-volt battery in that marine box. You don't need a cranking type battery because all you're doing is running accessories such as the headlights and wipers and the controllers. So a deep cycle battery has an advantage. If your converter fails, at least you have some chance to be able to get home before you run out of 12 volts or high voltage, whichever comes first. There's a windshield washer there. That's a 911 windshield washer pump in a bottle. The Porsche used the VW Beetle method of using the spare tire to inflate a bottle of washer fluid. But obviously I didn't have room for that anymore, plus the fact that I don't have a spare tire anymore, which could be an issue.
So we're looking at what used to be the luggage compartment then in this particular vehicle?
Yeah, the front trunk. The spare tire sat, actually there's a rack here. With lead acid I had another 6 batteries up here, which made the front very heavy. But I took advantage of the rack as a flat mounting surface because the car body is not flat in any way.
So you have a regular 12-volt
right
battery,
here.
right? And then the converter, which is right there.
Right.
Okay.
Then there's some controls down here. The controller, which is in the back, cannot have the car 12-volt attached to it, so I have to use relays to isolate the car's 12 volts from the 12 volts that the controller generates. Then up front, let's see, I don't know if you can see it. I have 2 gauges right here on the A-pillar. That was a company in Atlanta, Automotive Atlanta, makes a fiberglass replacement for the A-pillar padding. You can put 2 meters in it. That's very handy. I have the volts and the amps up there.
Okay.
And it's easy to watch while you're driving.
Okay.
And I have another meter. This is my one amounts to a fuel gauge. That's stated charge from 0 to 100% of the battery capacity. Typically, you don't run all the way to 0 and you don't charge all the way to 100% because the cells are not identical. And during charging, you want to stop when the cell with the highest voltage reaches a certain limit, irrespective of what the other cells are. Well, this is in 1972. The first few years, Porsche turned the 911 transmission around because in the 911 the engine's back, but in this car the engine's in front of the transmission. Well, they had to lengthen the shift lever, and that caused problems. So when I had transmission problems, I got what they call a side shifter or late transmission. It gives a much more robust feel to the shifting. And in a conversion like this, you typically keep the transmission because you don't have enough room for enough batteries to power a really powerful motor such as the Leaf or Volt or whatever would use. And so to both get decent acceleration and highway speed, you keep the transmission.
Okay.
Although I don't use reverse because with an AC motor, to reverse you just flip 2 of the phases. And with a DC motor, you flip the field versus the armature. And then the motor is directly underneath it, bolted to the transmission. Now this is the controller. This is the heart of the system. It takes the DC from the battery pack, and depending on the position, there's a throttle over here. It's actually a Hall effect diode. When you depress the accelerator pedal, the cable operates that, which tells the controller how much power to produce from the motor. And so it's generating 3-phase AC. It's got a shaft position encoder on the motor, so it knows the instantaneous phase angle of the motor, so it could compute suitable waveforms for whatever speed you need. When you lift off the throttle and you're asking for less speed than you have, it actually turns the motor into a generator and sends power back into the pack. Now this is a cooling for the controller. Since it's not 100% efficient, it does get hot.
George, you probably put this together in a period on your own time, but if you had to start from scratch, say, how long would you say it would take the average guy to put something like this together?
My first conversion went from March to November of 2009, and some of the time it's just waiting for parts. If you start from an existing car, you have to strip the internal engine.
That's probably
internal combustion engine, and
yeah,
that's a fair amount of time. This thing had a big air-cooled engine. There's this rubber seal all the way around it.
So if you had an inventory of all the electrical parts, can you give us a general idea of what that might cost?
I'm guessing that this second conversion cost $20,000. I have $17,000 in receipts, but I reused some of the stuff from the first conversion.
Okay. So it's not really a matter at this point of cost efficiency to build your own, but rather a matter of just the pride in building something on your own.
Yeah, well, I'm an inveterate do-it-yourself. This has a fat cable. There's a tap on every single cell, so during both charging and driving, it's continuously monitoring the voltages on all the cells. And during charging, if one of the cells reaches an upper limit, it will take various actions. The most extreme is to actually shut off the charger. And as it's approaching the top charge, some cells are going to get there before others, and if a cell reaches a certain limit, it starts shunting it with the resistance inside of here. So in effect, it's changing the voltage divider to give more voltage to the cells that are still down low.
So we have different approaches to the electric car. Here's one of them. We're talking with Stephen Guerra from Gebhardt BMW about the old new 2014 BMW i3. Stephen, can you tell us about this car?
Yes, so the BMW i3 is completely brand new to BMW. It's part of a subsidiary of BMW called Project I. Project I is BMW's initiative to keep all cars as efficient as possible without compromising on performance. Right here is the first BMW i3. This debuted earlier in the spring for BMW. We just recently started receiving these vehicles, and they're now starting to sell. They're very popular among Boulder and communities like Longmont as well. This right here has an expected range of 80 to 110 miles. That's contingent on driving style. Of course, inclement weathers are going to kind of hinder that. It's made out of completely recomposted materials such as Kenneth fibers. Present throughout the dashboard of the vehicle is eucalyptus wood, which is very visible, very aesthetic. It richens in time just with the age of the car. People really find that it has that aesthetic appeal. The main highlight of this car is it is very efficient. It's zero emissions, however, it doesn't compromise on performance. And as ironic as it sounds, the more aggressively you drive this car, the more efficient it is because it allows for that brake energy regeneration to occur.
That's quite the different story from most of what we hear about. If you go too fast, you're going to drain down faster.
Right. So, and of course, that only works with it, and it's an urban city car. It was designed for urban city driving. So, only in the city is that going to take place. Of course, if you're just gassing it and driving on highway speeds, that's going to not allow for that brake energy to regeneration to occur. But quick accelerations and decelerations are what's going to allow for that brake energy regeneration process to occur and regain the battery.
How long has Gebhardt been selling BMWs that are all electric or like this?
I'd say since the spring of this year, so spring of 2014.
Okay.
That's when we started receiving them, not just Gebhardt, but BMW nationally and internationally.
And are you encouraged by the volume of sales in the electric car?
I am, and not just the volume of sales, but the excitement people have with the vehicle. Not just this vehicle, but the electric community. This is a great community that fosters this type of driving. It's completely new, and some people are very resistant towards electric. They have that anxiety. However, this BMW has helped relieve some of that anxiety certain people have. So it's an incredible vehicle. It's had great sales volume so far. We look forward to its future and whatever predecessors may follow it.
Well, can you speak to the range anxiety, the classic question?
Right. So in terms of range anxiety, this system, the navigation system, is configured to let you know based on traffic updates, based on temperature, based on the distance you're driving, whether or not you have enough electric to get you to your desired destination. So that 100% is an accurate system, and that will relieve of any type of anxiety you could potentially have with the vehicle in terms of not being able to get to your destination. Additionally, there's an option that has what is called a range extender. The range extender is a gas generator that's going to recharge the battery while you're driving, and that adds an additional 50 miles. When the battery strikes 5%, it's depleted down to 5%. That's when the generator kicks in.
That's an option.
It's an option.
Okay.
Not everyone uses it. Not everyone needs it.
Okay,
It's a
Stephen
pretty good summary.
Guerra from Gebhardt BMW. Thank you so much for your time,
Of course.
Stephen.
Thank you very much.
Sure. As an owner, what can you say to us about how you feel about owning this vehicle?
Owning and buying an electric car is one of the best decisions that we've ever made, because I used to drive a gas guzzler. It's a sedan and it's a V6, and just looking at how much I'm spending on gas just driving around town, it's just painful.
Yes.
And you know, it took us a while to decide to buy an electric car, because they're kind of still on the expensive side.
Yes.
And what we did is we looked for a used one, and we found one for $18,000.
Oh, that's useful information. See,
Yes.
I've been trying to find out about that. Now,
Yeah.
what was the mileage on the used one?
It has 10,000 miles in it.
Okay.
For 18 grand, which is a
Okay.
good buy. I was like, you know what? Yes, we're gonna trade in my gas car and buy this electric car, because instead of looking at the short-term savings or costs or benefits of, you know, driving an ICE car or electric car, we realized that, hey, driving an electric car long-term, it's going to save us more money, and it's good for the environment.
So, do you have any kind of backup vehicle, or are you solely into the electric cars now?
We have a Chevy Volt, which is an extended range car.
Okay.
So we use that for long range or long distance driving.
Okay.
And then we use my car for just driving around town. And I'll tell you, I was able to drive my Ford Focus Electric from Longmont to Fort Collins without a problem. Yes.
Okay.
I still have 30 miles left in my car. I took I-25, I took 287, without a problem. I mean,
I-25.
mm-hmm.
Now, that brings up an interesting question. What is the top cruising speed?
I drove 75 miles per hour, and while I was driving, I was like worried that, will I be able to make it to Fort Collins? I was able to make it to Fort Collins with still 50 miles left, and I was like, from Fort Collins to Longmont, I'm going to take 287, and I was able to make it, and I still have 30 miles left in my car.
So obviously, the faster you go, the more juice you use. Then.
Yes.
Is that right?
So it's not really advisable to take an electric car on the freeway.
Okay. Do you have an electric bike by any chance?
Right now we don't. I wanted one.
Yeah.
Because it's I mean, I would like to use my electric car for probably picking up groceries or going further than 10 miles, but I wanted to ride an electric bicycle, just probably from my house to downtown Longmont, you know.
So you say that you use the Volt for greater ranges then. Could you tell us more about that?
Our Chevy Volt, well, they said that the battery, you can go for like 35 miles, but the car detects how good of a driver you are. So right now we're actually getting 45 to 50 miles on a charge. The car uses the gas to run the generator, so it charges the car while you're driving.
Okay.
So let's say while it's running the generator, then you get six miles on your battery, then it's going to start running on battery again. So that's what it does.
So the Volt is a hybrid then, is that what you're saying?
They don't want to consider it as a hybrid. It's called an extended range. The car uses the gas for the generator, so it charges the battery of the car. Instead of like a hybrid, once the battery is out, then it's going to run on gas. The Chevy Volt is, yes, it's running on gas to charge the battery, and then once you have enough charge in your car, it's going to run using the battery again.
Okay.
So it's like a cycle.
I see.
So.
Okay. Well, Roma, your enthusiasm for the ownership of the vehicle is contagious, and we're glad to have your sparkling endorsement. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We're speaking with Dan Christian this afternoon about the XM 5000 Li Extreme Scooter. What can you tell us about the Extreme Scooter?
Well, it's a great urban transportation solution. It's silent. It's on right now. Can you tell? Yeah. It's got a range of 30-40 miles depending on how hard you're driving it. Less if you go fast because you've got more wind resistance. And the top speed is about 55, so I can do the country roads around here without any trouble. Don't have to worry about people feeling they have to get around me because I'm so slow. And it's just a great way to get around. It is considered a motorcycle in Colorado, so it's actually registered with insurance and plates and all that stuff.
You don't want to go out on I-25 with it then?
No, definitely not 25. Even diagonal is,
Yeah.
people go fast on diagonal.
Even 287 is a little on the 65 spark. Tell me,
if you need to go somewhere there, you go up on the shoulder like a bicycle would.
Okay.
And you stay out of the main flow of traffic, and if that's the only way to get somewhere, you do it. But yeah, you don't want to stay in the main flow.
So the 55 is the top speed now. The cruise, is it okay to cruise at the top speed then?
Your range is going to be slower the faster you go. So if if you want to go 55, your range is going to be a lot less because you'll feel the air resistance.
Okay.
That's pretty much the main loss for an electric vehicle. The efficiency is relatively good and stays pretty constant. So if you're more if you do 35, 40, you'll get a much greater range than you will at 55.
Okay. What about the price ranges now and then some of the add-ons or basic model or whatever information you might want to know? We might want to know about that.
Well, this one was 6,500, so it's pretty much the top of the line. They've got some lower power versions that are cheaper. There's not really much in the way of add-ons. You could put bags on the back. That's about it. There's not a lot of options except the power level. If you drop down to the 4,000 watt model, then it's considered a low powered scooter, and there's a tag that you do once, but you don't have to do license and registration the way this is a motorcycle. So that's good for people that don't want to go as fast. The 4,000 has less power, doesn't quite go as far or as fast.
You have to have a motorcycle license for this?
Yes, it's considered a motorcycle by the state of Colorado, and you do have to have a motorcycle endorsement to ride it.
What about maintenance now? How often do you do that yourself?
Well, you charge it and you check the tires, and that's pretty much the maintenance.
That's all?
That's it.
Can you ride it at nighttime?
Sure. It's got headlights and high beams, and it's as good as any motorcycle, which is not saying much. Motorcycles, when you go around turns, the headlight is one way and the turn is the other, so that's never great. But it doesn't solve that problem, but it's no worse than any other motorcycle.
Have you found any other enthusiasts with a similar vehicle in the area?
I haven't found other electric scooter riders, although the lady at E-Planet says she used to have one and she just switched to electric bike because she enjoyed the exercise. I've got an electric bike too, and if I want exercise, that is actually a better solution. But if I want to go fast, this is a better solution.
Well, showing it on public access, maybe some people will be interested, and we'll keep in contact. Maybe we'll form like a little Hells Angels club.
Well, I'm at Tinkkermill. You can always find me there.
Okay. Okay.
And there's people there that are interested in electric vehicles and emission-free and just lots of fun.
So you attend the weekly meeting then of a meetup of electric vehicles here at Tinkkermill.
Right.
You attend that every week, and most of them are into the car, or any of them also into bikes, and so.
It's a variety. I mean, they're generally interested in the eco benefits. I mean, it's silent, it's clean. They're interested in just once you get past the purchase cost, they're much cheaper to run than any gasoline engine. From the gasoline alone, when you throw in maintenance, and it's even cheaper. And they're lots of fun. It's a fun area to work on. In some ways, people miss the old days of cars when you could pop the hood and work on it yourself. Well, in some ways, electric is taking that over. You go convert your own electric vehicle, and now you're going, well, okay, I need a motor. How fast do I want to be? How big a battery I need to make that work? And you can convert a regular car, find something that's got a blown engine and convert it to electric, and it's a lot of fun.
What about insurance? Is it any different than a gas vehicle?
It's got liability insurance. Because it's a small run vehicle, they don't have any history about the vehicle itself, so they won't cover it against theft. They don't know how often they get stolen or things like that. Okay. So it's just liability insurance to make sure that if something happens, that somehow I'm liable for an accident, that insurance covers that.
Right.
And it's cheap.
That's or comparable, or not that expensive.
Oh, it's much less than what I pay on the car.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. The whole thing's about 360 pounds. So it's easy to manhandle, and if you need to pull it around, there are hitches that you could put this on and tow it. Not at highway speeds though. You would actually have to put it on a trailer if you want to go that fast.
Okay. And so you can take on an extra passenger here. How does
Yep.
that run with the extra weight?
I haven't tried it yet.
Oh, okay.
Want to go for a ride?
Okay, sure, why not?
You ready?
Yeah,
Okay.
go. Wow, it's got quite a pickup.
Yeah. Well, it gets going. I mean, it's not super fast, but you get going, you know. So the acceleration is kind of like a Civic, if you ask me. It's less than most motorcycles.
Yeah, but still faster than the average duck.
Yeah, that's full throttle.
I hear you.
We're just here talking normally. You have to talk over the wind, but never over the engine.
All right, great. Fantastic. Great acceleration. Fun to ride.
What are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day in Colorado.
Now you are an owner.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about about the most important thing that it is about owning this car to you?
The most important thing is they're fast.
They're fast.
They are fast. You wouldn't think of an electric car being fast normally, but because of the way electric motors work versus gas engines, you don't have to wait for the car to get to an ideal RPM. The full torque is available at 0. So we actually chirp the tires on these cars all the time. They're a lot of fun to drive. A lot of people think they're boring, but because of all that torque, being a guy who loves to go fast, it's a lot of fun. But that's what I think the most important thing is about them. They're not as boring as some people think they are. You know, they're great too because you can go fast and still not burn any gasoline.
Wow, this is something that, you know, not very many people are probably aware of. The usual conception of electric cars is, a top speed 35, it's not much faster than a golf cart.
My Volt that I have, because we also have a Volt, and the Volt can go 105 as its top speed. And there are some people actually...
Excuse me, is that 105 miles per hour or kilometers?
That is 105 miles per hour, and that's full electric too. One beautiful thing about the handling on electric cars is because of the lower center of gravity due to the batteries, they're lower in the car, so cornering is awesome, it's phenomenal. In fact, I think it's on par to a Subaru Impreza when it comes to cornering. Another thing about it is the balance of the cars are usually quite good. So braking, accelerating is very, very nice. The cars themselves, as far as handling, they're on par to any other car you would drive. You would be able to get into the car and just drive it like you would a normal car. There's nothing new you'd have to learn. There's nothing special. You just get in and go and just not use any gasoline.
Well, that is an obvious advantage. What are some of the other things that we might not have thought about, you know, that you have observed in your ownership?
Okay, well, there's two big ones. Normally when you're driving a regular car, you brake and you stop at a stoplight, your gas engine's running. When you're an electric car, when you let off the gas, or the accelerator, I'm sorry, the car actually starts generating its power back. So when you're slowing down, you're not wasting any gas engine running. Wow. It's generating its power back into the batteries. When you're at a stop, there's nothing running. You're not using any gasoline. The car is just sitting there. So it generates its power back into the car, which also means you don't have to replace your brakes as often because you're not braking as much either. So there's a lot of benefits for that part of the car. In addition, what normally people spend on gas a month, I don't know how much you spend on your car a month, but I was spending about $250 to $300 a month in gas.
Easily.
Okay. For that same amount of money, you can get a brand new electric car without having any additional cost. Just the cost that you spend in gasoline could go into a new car.
Your car payment, then, in other words.
Exactly.
Now, I understand that you bought one of your vehicles used, is that right?
That is correct. This Ford Focus, as you see behind us, we bought that used from Kansas. They shipped it to us. We had custom leather installed, and in total, it was $18,500. It had 10,000 miles. It was a 2012. In my book, that's practically brand new.
Yes.
So you can buy a car for a decent price or lease it for the same amount of money you would spend a month. And in most options, leasing is the way to go because the technology is changing so often. But if you plan on staying in the city the entire time, buying one used is also a good option too.
What about the warranties that might or might not be offered with an electric car?
Okay. As far as warranties are concerned, they're all 100,000 miles, 8 years on the electric battery, electric drive system, which is a beautiful thing because that's the same as what some transmissions. In fact, some transmissions are only 60,000 miles on a gas-powered car. So your battery is guaranteed for 100,000 miles or 8 years. Now, a lot of people are worried that the batteries will just drop dead at the end of it. That's not the case. It's just like a lead light bulb. If you ever owned a lead light bulb, it doesn't drop dead after the 10-year warranty on your light bulb. It just gets a little bit dimmer. And then that's the same thing case with the batteries. They might not have as much charge. And I say might because I have a friend who's got over 250,000 miles and he's experienced no hit on the battery at all. So the batteries will still keep running. By the time you even need to replace the batteries, the technology will be vastly different, be vastly cheaper, and you'll also have a lot more new advances to the newer battery systems and stuff.
So the way to go then is lease then?
Depends on your budget. You have to check your financial budget. My grandfather, he likes to buy his cars because he likes to sell them. He'll keep them for 10 years. If you're the kind of person who likes to keep your car for a long time, by all means, buy a used one. If you want a brand new one, though, go lease, because the incentives you get from the federal government and from Colorado will give you almost $11,000 off of the price of the vehicle just for leasing it.
And who knows what's coming up in the way of technological changes. You might want in a few years something with such a greater package, or technology is moving so fast that that might be a viable option for people who are interested in keeping up with the technology.
Absolutely. In fact, Nissan will have a newer model in 2 years of the Leaf. They're going to give it a more of a subdued look. It doesn't look so different than a regular car. The battery technology next year should almost double. So again, most people only drive about 30 miles to and from work in total on an average daily basis. With the Leaf, you get advertised 76, but I know people get 110 on it. It just depends on your driving habits. They can't advertise a maximum, they advertise the minimum range. So always keep that in mind. The number you get is a minimum range, even during the wintertime and summertime. But for instance, our Ford Electric, it's advertised as 76 miles. But we get 110 on it. So you don't get that with the miles per gallon on a gas car. You get their best possible miles per gallon, but nobody usually sees that.
Now, speaking of style, I noticed that the car looks very similar to a regular gas engine car. Will that trend continue, or people spend a lot of their attention on how they look in a car? How do you feel about that?
Yes, actually, that is a very good question. In fact, that's why Nissan is actually considering going back to a more standardized style for a car instead of something too out there. Because some people like the idea, but they don't like the appearance of the car. And I myself, the reason why we went for the Focus, because I like the Focus's styling better. It's very European-style grille on it. And we like the styling better. The technology, batteries, and motors are pretty much the same. There's only so many ways you can spool an electric motor and so many ways you can build a battery. But speaking of battery technology, it's getting better. Japan's working on some amazing batteries, so is Europe. So a lot of stuff coming out.
It's becoming more and more affordable to greater and greater amounts of people, which I think is really important to really get this car launched into our society and culture.
Absolutely, I agree. Do your homework, do the internet, check out our company website. We help people like you buy an electric car, and we don't charge anything for it. So we just like getting people into them.
So we might be able to shop online then, say, if we can't find what we need locally, we might be able to shop online and actually get a pretty good deal on delivery.
Absolutely, and if at the very least you can actually help a dealer that's local be more competitive with an online price from another dealership out of state. So absolutely, you can always get a good one.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed seeing some of these electric vehicles and will help us make Longmont the most electric vehicle-friendly city in Colorado. Thanks for watching.